Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting, communications, and self-government. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how to talk to your kids about death. For years, I worked at a funeral home, helping people plan funerals, and I was the person who was standing there at the funeral and the viewing with the family. And oftentimes people would bring me their children and they would say, "Do you have a way that you can help me explain what has happened to my child? Because they're having a hard time understanding." And I would say, "Absolutely." So what I would like to share with you in this video is how I explained to other people's children for many years working in the funeral industry what happens at death and how children can understand it. In fact, I think it brings a little bit of understanding for us as well. Normally when I would talk with a child and a family about death and I would explain that to them, I would factor in what their religious preference was. So usually I already knew that because I was the person that was helping them plan their funeral. So depending on what religion they were and what they believed fundamentally about life after death, or if there was or wasn't life after death, then that would help me better teach them what happened when a person died. Now, I'm a religious person, so my preferred method is to teach this with a religious perspective. But there also is a way that you can teach what happens with death if you don't have a religious perspective. So what I'm going to do is first teach how I taught most often to people and their children when someone died what happens at death with a religious perspective. And then after that, I will share how to teach it in a little bit more general way that doesn't necessarily involve spirituality. So one thing that you always want to explain if you are a religious person and if you're taking more of a spiritual take on death with your child or with somebody else's child that you might be talking to is that death is part of God's timing, right? So we can see that people have their own timing. There's some people that come late to events. There's some people that are always early. Well, God has a timing for each and every one of us. Some people are here for a very short time, and some people are here for a long time. And God knows how long each of us needs to be here. So this was something that I told them they could trust in. So even if a little baby has died, they can know that God understands the timing of that person, of that soul, and that they were able to accomplish whatever it was that God wanted them to do, even if they only had that little amount of time. So I would explain to them that God is the Father of our spirits, of what is inside of us, as well as being the creator of our bodies. And when we were with Him before we came here, we were in spirit form. And I would use my hand and explain, this is like our spirit. And then He created a body for us. So this glove is like a body. And so when we were born, our spirit and our body were joined together. And anytime we moved our spirit or our spirit wanted something, our body did it for us. And it was so beautiful because it's like the spirit and the body are best friends. They're like one. And they're so happy when they're with each other. But when a person dies, then the body becomes separated from the spirit. When the body is used up or it's done its job, then the body rests, but the spirit lives on. And the spirit goes back to our Heavenly Father, goes back to God, and can wait until the time when they get to reunite with their body again through resurrection. Now, this is a Christian perspective, but many of the people who lived by me were Christian, and this definitely fit the bill for them. Just having a simple little glove and understanding how a glove and a hand work together is a really easy way for children to know that they are more than just what they see on the outside. And so was the person who happened to have just passed away. And that means that that person can actually still influence them and maybe even be with them at special times. They just might not see them there, which is something that also can bring comfort to some people at a time of death. Before I get to my next points, which whether you're religious or not, you'll probably want to pay attention to because there are just good pieces of information that you can use for understanding about death with a child that you might be talking to. Hit that subscribe button. There is so much content on this channel that is specifically geared toward families and the developmental needs of children at different phases of their life. You're not going to want to miss the other content that I have to share for you. So subscribe now. So death is difficult, and especially if somebody does not have an understanding of God's plan or an afterlife or something like that, it even can seem more difficult. So there were some funerals that I officiated at where there were people so distraught over the death of the loved one that they literally were trying to jump in the hole in the ground with that person because they did not want to leave them. And they had no understanding of what was really happening at this time. And so they needed peace. So sometimes some of their family members would say, could you just talk to this person a little bit about death? Is there anything that we can do to bring her comfort or something like that? So this is what I would explain to them. I would say, it's okay to cry. It's healthy to grieve. This is a time where most people feel sad. In fact, it's unusual if a person doesn't feel sad. But there's always hope because the generations of people keep coming. This is a good thing. So just like a plant goes through different phases during the seasons of its production and life, people do the same thing. So there's the time when the plant is just a little seed, and then it grows into a seedling, and then it leafs out, and then finally it bears fruit. But then over time it gets weaker and droopier, and it finally withers and dies. And then the process begins again with that fruit that fell from that tree. We can always remember the person that passed on because they leave fruits. Even if they're just little people, there are memories in our hearts and in our minds about that person that are the fruits that grow and inspire us to become better versions of ourselves because of who they were to us and to other people around them. So talking about the seasons of life and maybe the seasons of a plant is very comparable to the seasons of a human life. Now there's another thing that I teach all of my children, and this is really helpful for them learning how to accept death and know that they can choose to be okay even during this really hard time. And that is a skill called accepting a no answer. So at a time when it's not the time of death, I have taught my child this skill because I teach them lots of skills with my teaching self-government, parenting, principles and skills that I'm most known for teaching actually around the world. And you can find out more information about these skills at teachingselfgovernment.com. So if you want to go there. But I teach them the skill accepting no answer. There's 4 steps to that skill. So you look at the situation or the person and you keep a calm face, voice, and body. You say, okay, or you ask to disagree appropriately about whatever it is, and then you drop the subject. So there are some things in your life that you just have to look at the situation like a death and say, this happened. It hurts. It's healthy and good to cry a little bit. That's still within the realm of keeping a calm face, voice, and body. But there's a point where you have to go, I can't let this eat me up forever, right? And so you say, okay, and then you finally allow yourself to drop the subject, to not let it hold you back anymore, and to be able to move on and become the best version of yourself so that you can bear good fruit, right? Death is a difficult time and it is complex to understand, but if you take just a minute to give a few analogies or examples to the children, then they can more easily understand what's happening and not be afraid. I think that's probably one of the most important things that we can share with our children, is that death isn't something to be afraid of. It's just moving on to a different time or phase in our journey as a spirit. Or if we're not religious, it is just a new season, and there will be other seasons that come for other people that we can always have hope in, and we can accept the no answers of life. So this is important. If this video has been helpful to you, I'm pretty sure that the next video that would be of the most benefit, especially during this time, is a video called The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success. So that video is actually a class that I gave on overcoming some of the traps that we have in our brain. And sometimes when a person is going through a hard time, they literally trap themselves with some expectations that they should not be having at that time. So please watch The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success now. It should help improve your communication and your relationships.